Newly released documents obtained by WBIR detail explicit and vulgar exchanges among Pilot Flying J executives at a team meeting in 2012. A federal judge in Chattanooga ordered the release of those recordings today. That happened after WBIR, the News Sentinel, and other media organizations asked for those recordings to be released. They were played in court during the trial of 4 former Pilot Flying J employees that wrapped up last month. The recordings include the voices of several former pilot executives using racial slurs and vulgar language. They also made fun of CEO Jimmy Haslam and his brothers, as well as board members. Former employees heard in those recordings include former President Mark Hazelwood. The jury last month found him guilty of wire fraud and other charges. 5 other former employees are also in those recordings. Here's a clip from one of them. It's right after a racist song from the 1980s artist David Allan Coe.
How's that sensitivity training coming along?
In a statement today, Pilot Flying J said it found the tapes disturbing and employees who participated are no longer with the company.